Yeah, we see these cycles. Cycles come, cycles change, things evolve. And I think the main thing is, we've got to be thinking not just what's going on now, but what's coming in the future. I think it's very, very interesting to me that right now it almost feels like SEOs and marketers in general sit in one of two camps. Either they're of the opinion that AI search is everything that we do must be focused on visibility in AI search, or the other camp has sat there going, yeah, let's just keep doing what we've always done. I think both are very, very dangerous camps to be in right now, because there is no getting away from the fact that change is coming. Change is coming probably faster than most people would like to admit, but we don't know what that change will be. But in the meantime, we still have to drive traffic which converts to our sites, to our client sites. We can't take the foot off the gas completely as to what works right now. And I think that's where I struggle a little bit, that it's almost like AI is not shiny new object syndrome, because I think a lot of people are incredibly scared of what's coming. But we just have to look at it through a lens of, okay, let's look at this in a sensible way. Let's look at this as to, let's do what we know works now and have that almost curiosity to go, we know things need to change. Let's get ahead of this curve rather than going into panic mode and drastically changing things up.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Do you know what? Let me do the introduction. Hello and welcome to SEO is Not Voodoo. For many, SEO is still a dark art. So I thought I'd invite some of the brightest minds in SEO to help us by asking them the same 6 questions. So together, we hope to understand SEO just a little bit better. I hope. Joining me today, I have James Brockbank from Digital Loft. You've been at Digital Loft for absolutely ever, James. We were just discussing that before we came on.
Yes, I have. Yeah, I founded the agency 11 years ago now. I've been in SEO for, I'm in my 16th year in SEO now, which feels quite a long time, but it's still as exciting as it was back then.
As we were just discussing before we came on air, it is probably the most exciting time. I call it exciting. Others, as we were discussing, probably see it as a bit scary. Where do you fit into that?
I think it's both. I think, there's nothing wrong with saying you think it's, we all think it's a very exciting time in search, and whilst at the same time being a bit, I think scared is the wrong word. I think apprehensive or considering, taking consideration to what's coming is the sensible thing. But I think, ultimately what we're seeing right now is everybody is just AI. Yes, AI is here. Yes, AI is changing the world of search, but we can't all just go into panic mode and change everything we've done and on things that, quite honestly, most people don't have the answers to right now because they're changing so fast.
Yeah, I sort of almost level it to how how the political world is at the moment and how the world is, thinking. SEO has been around a long time, okay? Now, since the invention of essentially Google. And as part of that, back in the old days, I still think of this as, social media wasn't really a thing, and now we've got a lot of noise and a lot of words being said, and AI has come at a point which is, it's very shiny, it's very new, and because this as an entity is very excited, it generates views, it generates watches. I'm guilty of this as a creator myself, and as a consequence, we get in a position where AI then becomes something which takes off, and therefore you have people that think the house is on fire. And the house is not on fire. It's
not, no. I mean, if you look at the data behind certainly AI mode, I think that's the best comparison we can see right now. We all keep seeing the crocodile analogy where impressions are up, clicks are down. If you go to Search Console and have a look, most people right now are seeing that sort of crocodile mouth, open crocodile mouth visual on their charts. Mm-hmm. But I think what doesn't get talked about anywhere near often enough is what is this actually doing a business's bottom line? Now, my take right now, certainly from the data I've seen across our client base, other people who I've spoken to, is where traffic is being taken away from is top of the funnel. It's traffic that I would like to say in a lot of instances was never going to convert. Now, that hurts a lot of people in SEO. A lot of people have taken this mindset for probably the past 5 years that traffic is everything, and that if traffic is up, the business is up. That is absolutely not the case. A business can lose traffic and still be doing very well commercially. The problem we have is that for so long, this industry has taken traffic as almost a proxy for actual business success. So what's happening now is we're seeing traffic down and everyone's going into panic mode. Whereas what not enough people are doing is taking a step back and saying, well, what is this actually doing to the metrics that matter, to conversions, to leads, to revenue? When you start to look at that and correlate it with actually where AI overviews, as an example, are showing right now, then you start to realize that strategies have to shift. But what you also start to realize is that the strategy most people have been peddling for the last 5 years is absolute bullshit. It should have never been peddled in the first place. But SEO got easy. Between 2019 and 2023, SEO got really, really easy. It became a volume game. You could game the system by mass publishing content to, without getting too technical, you were essentially faking topical authority. And it worked. We saw the helpful content update. My take on the helpful content update is that yes, a lot of sites that deserve to get hit got hit. But what doesn't get talked about enough is that the goalposts moved for everybody. The bar got raised on the quality of content that needs to be in place across the board to rank. It's almost that, that phantom impact of helpful content update, where sites didn't get hit, they were not suppressed by the helpful content update, but Google's expectation of what is determined good enough to rank raised. And that's not just content in terms of written words, in terms of media on a page, that's things like measuring user engagement. If a page is not good enough to keep someone on the page, it ain't ranking anymore.
Yeah. Is this a case of, we did go through a phase of quantity worked, quantity was nice. Are we actually now in a phase of SEO thanks to the helpful content update, which again was another period of my house was on fire, of quality over quantity?
We should be. I don't think we are, but we should be. I think there's still, I think what happened is we saw the perfect storm. We saw 2019, probably 2019 onwards, it became probably easier than ever to rank a site on Google. It felt like it did back in 2010, 2011, but the tactics we used changed. It was a volume game. It was a quantity over quality, almost like it was with links back in the day. And I think I look at this as an experienced SEO, and I can comfortably say this was always coming. The helpful content update was not a surprise. When you can take a site, and I have multiple examples of this on projects that I started as a bit of a testing platform, taking sites from nothing to 1 million page views in 9 months, it should not be that easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
If history has taught us anything, it's that when something is too good to be true or too easy, it has a finite life cycle. It is going to be taken away from us very, very soon. But we saw across from that, we saw so many people coming into the industry in that boom of 2020, 21, 22. COVID fueled everybody going online. There were more jobs in digital. There were more roles in marketing. And a lot of marketers joined the industry in a time where it was easier than ever to drive. So that's what they know. So we almost have this perfect storm of I don't believe any SEO was set out there to do things that don't align with how Google works, with what is going to work long term. It's just they don't know what they don't know. We have this perfect storm. The goalposts have changed, and lots of people do not have the experience to navigate their way out of it. They just do what they've always done. So I think, we should be in the period where quality is far, far, far more important than quantity, but it should have always been that way.
Yeah, totally agree. Couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Okay, let's get into the questions, because I know, and one of the reasons I reached out to you, James, because I know you have such a wealth of experience, and that's going to serve you well when it comes to these 6 questions that I'm going to pose to you. So,
Absolutely.
So it's going to be, I know that these are going to be fascinating answers. So let's start. Number 1, that one aspect of SEO that you personally have been most passionate about, and why. I know the answer to this already, but let's get into it.
Do you? What do you think I'm going to say?
Well, either you're going to say digital PR and link building. That's my personal, but I might be wrong.
I'm not. It's what I'm actually going to say is driving revenue, not just rankings. And I think it transcends any of that. It transcends anything tactical, and it's strategy. And my take, not just right now, but over the past 10 years, has been not enough SEOs learn to be strategic. They don't learn how to think like a business, how a business works. And it's costing their clients and their teams growth. Because I think, what we have to accept right now is that traffic and rankings are vanity metrics. Revenue is a sanity metric. And what we've seen, right, over the past, and, we can talk about now, we can talk about 5 years ago, we can go back 10 years, is that almost passion on that SEO should be driving revenue, not just rankings. I actually think it's quite rare. And I think, it's so easy to get bogged down in being tactical on how to find and fix technical issues, how to structure content, how to build links. And, you mentioned digital PR, and I think, yes, I am a big believer in brand build of SEO and how that has evolved over the past 10 years, 100%. But I think at the core of it, what I'm most passionate about in this industry is driving revenue and SEO being seen as a serious grown-up commercial channel. A lot of this comes from the fact that when I started out in SEO in like 2009, SEO did not have a seat at the boardroom table. It was seen as a joke. It was that manipulative tactic that no serious marketer in the C-suite wanted to talk about. It was, go and spam your way, go and do a few tricks. And that's how it was. And I think, when I started in SEO 2009, that's the belief I was taught. I was taught that, SEO is all about tricking your way to the top of Google. I very, very quickly realized that it shouldn't be that way. We saw Penguin hit, we saw Panda hit, and over time, we've seen SEO started to be taken more seriously. SEO, digital PR, they are still seen by many marketers as those spammy inferiors. It should not be that way. So I think the one thing that I'm most passionate about, both now and over the past 10 years, is almost flying this flag that SEO is a channel that should stand up on its own, and it should be driving measurable business impacts, not vanity metrics.
I couldn't agree with you more. And actually, that sort of harps back to the name of this podcast, which is, there's always been an entity of the view of SEO being voodoo. And I think part of that is because there's no budget, there's no ads, there's no put this in, get this out kind of. Although there is, and you can measure it in such a way it's seen or perceived in such a way. And it's visible it's visible to a board level typically, or a management level, as some kind of voodoo. And you're right, that was something historically that's always the case, and I still think pertains even to this day.
But SEOs are the problem here. SEOs have always been the problem here. SEOs who for years now, and SEOs have reported on rankings. They've reported on the number of links earned. Go and find me a board who cares about the number of links that were earned, the number of title tags that were changed, the number of techies that were fixed. They do not care. They care about how much money came out of this at the end of the month. That is all they care about.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. You're absolutely right. And again, this comes back to KPIs, doesn't it? There's a tangibility. It's a fob-off means of being able to measure that.
I was just going to say, let's touch on digital PR and link building for a minute. My honest belief here is that the digital PR industry as a whole, that's in-house agencies, have played a huge part in us being in a point right now where success is measured incorrectly. We still see briefs coming in every other week where the obsession is on cost per link, the number of links earned, measuring the outcome of digital PR in outputs, and we have to move away from this. But if we think about what happened here, we saw a surge in the industry in 2020, 21, 22, and agencies started playing off one another to go, I'll guarantee you more links than that agency will. I'll offer you a better cost per link. So what happens is that these things became easy proxies for success. So brands, businesses were led into thinking that the best way to measure the success of digital PR is cost per link, or the number of links earned. It's been measured on outputs, not outcomes. But you can go and earn 100 links and it have no impact on business success. You can, same with follow versus no follow links, affiliate links, syndicated links. We've measured it on the wrong things, and the industry only has itself to blame. And we now have to navigate out of this we're now in what Gartner called the era of less at the end of last year. Marketing budgets are shrinking, but there is an expectation for those marketing budgets to deliver a bigger impact than ever before. We have to now navigate out of this and have these conversations, set these expectations that the actual output of 10 links, 50 links, 100 links, it means nothing out of the context of what does this do for the business. And this is where we find ourselves, and I think everyone has, it became easy to sell digital PR in that way. It became easy to sell SEO 10 years ago on will guarantee your rankings. How can anyone guarantee rankings? They can't. Things are so volatile. And I think, we found ourselves in a place where you find me a business that hasn't been burned by an SEO agency in the past. The reason they're burned isn't because the wrong things were being done. In a lot of cases, it's that the wrong expectations were set. SEO was never set up against the right expectations in the first place.
I remember running a campaign many moons ago, which was because I was doing a lot of work at the time with bloggers, and there was a big frustration with bloggers at the moment because they were just starting out, and obviously a big source of revenue for them sort of coincides in the Venn diagram with SEO in the fact that they would be paid regarding the links that that they would generate, and they were constantly being measured against this metric of DA. And I had a massive campaign at the time. I was really trying to get across to so many brands and PR people at the time to say, look, you're measuring this against DA is entirely wrong, because it's an incorrect KPI. Relevancy is a real KPI. And if you're I was working alongside quite a prominent green blogger, a sort of eco blogger at the time, and I say, you've got a green eco product, you should be reaching out to this green eco blogger, regardless of what her DA is. Okay, that doesn't matter. What matters is the relevancy between the content that she's going to write and your product, and that's the link that actually mattered. And it resonates in the same way with me.
But we're in 2025 and we're still having these same conversations. People just do not get it because they're thinking in old school SEO metrics, which come from a place of buying links. That mindset comes from 2010, 2011, where most links were bought, not earned. And it was, okay, well, I need something to determine why this link costs more than that link. DA was a really great metric. Before that, it was page rank.
Yeah. I love a punk marketer, James. This is why I love you so much. Perfect. So number 2, with an ever-evolving search landscape, what's the one fundamental aspect of SEO that has remained a constant in this very frequently changing?
Yeah, I'm going to sound like a stuck record here, but it's the need for businesses to see a return on investment. It's a need for commercial terms to rank and drive traffic. I had a really interesting conversation with Stephen Kemwright a couple of weeks ago, obviously original founder of Rise at 7. And we were talking about how, me and Stephen both got into SEO at a similar time. And I remember back when I started out, you almost could measure SEO success on rankings because, Tom, you'll remember this as well. When you had 3 ad spaces at the top of the SERPs, but they were nowhere near as expanded as they are now. Most Google ads were in the sidebar and a couple were at the bottom. So actually, if you ranked number 1 organically, if you ranked even top 3 or top 5 organically for commercial terms, you could almost assume that was going to drive money, drive revenue, drive business impact. As the SERPs have evolved, that's become harder and harder to measure. So I think, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I think we could use rankings as a proxy for SEO success better than we can today because the SERPs were 10 blue links. When the SERPs were 10 blue links, you could say with great confidence that the click-through rate of position 1, position 2 are double what they are today. So if you were targeting the right terms, and you'll remember the same as me, when I started in SEO, it was what's your keyword list? You'd have 10 target keywords that you were trying to rank a business for. And it's really easy for us to laugh at that now. But the message I've been peddling for the last year is we need to be really, really clear on, as SEOs, where are we trying to drive commercial impact? If you take, the example I often use is someone like John Lewis that sells pretty much everything. You can't drive growth for everything at once. So you need to take that granular focus. Where are we trying to drive growth from? Yes, the tactics that we've had to shift to have changed, but actually, think back 12 years, 15 years, that we've got a pool of keywords that we really, really care about driving visibility for. Are we almost going full circle? Because if we have that now, then we're and I'm not necessarily saying rankings. I think, we all should have a group of target pages and topics that we're prioritizing around. But in one sense, we've gone full circle where we're saying we need to know where we're competing, where we're trying to drive growth from. And I think it comes back to commercially focused SEO. You need to understand how are you going to make this business money? Where is that traffic that has commercial intent going to come from? And that is visibility of the pages that drive conversions.
Yeah, exactly. It's more about, this list of 10 keywords is not necessarily as relevant now, but
No,
it's more.
but it's that
more about
that mindset that goes into that.
yes, yeah, exactly. You almost have to think of it and mirror that to clusters of keywords or pages, exactly like you were saying.
100%.
It's about what's bringing that traffic through onto the website. I completely get that.
Yeah, but I think I look back 10 years and it was very, very rare that I was publishing top of the funnel blog content. Very,
yes.
very rare. We were focusing on ranking commercial pages. And I think, your question was about, that one fundamental aspect that remains a constant. It's that need to focus efforts on driving commercial gains through visibility for commercial terms, commercial pages. And it shouldn't ever have changed, but it did. Somewhere in the middle, we all got I say we all, a lot of people got bogged down with traffic as a measure of success and almost forgetting that traffic needs to convert.
Is it maybe, and because I see this a little bit as well, I do recall days where SEOs were more focused on trying to drive a bottom line more in the early days.
Yeah.
And I think was there a middle bit where it became more about process and tools, and then coming full circle a little bit.
I mean, I think between 2018 and 2023, SEO became really boring. It came processes, looking back, why any of us switched to things like Surf for SEO and tools that were just forcing us to create copycat content is, looking back, it's laughable. So I think, we got back into that same, we became lazy SEOs. We became lazy SEOs because for a time that worked. And it meant, I think, a lot of SEOs took their eye off the ball on understanding how search engines work. If I go back a little bit to your first question, my other passion in this industry is understanding in specific detail how search engines work. I think it's a skill that not enough SEOs take the time to understand. We have patents. Last year, we had the Google documentation leak. We've had the DOJ trials. I could probably put a pretty high bet on the fact that 8 in 10 SEOs have never read any of these things. So they don't know how search engines work. If you don't know how a search engine works, how can you properly optimize for it? You're doing what you think works, not what you know works. Same happens with LLMs. We're going into this world of LLMs, of AI search. How many SEOs have actually taken the time to understand from a technical perspective how LLMs work? They are not the same as a search engine. Yes, they share a lot of similarities, but it is a learning curve. It's a technical learning curve. SEO, from probably 2018 onwards, became a discipline that was weighted towards content and...
And you're so right, because I'm seeing so many... I mean, that's a big focus of me right now, trying to understand... And I'm sure it is for a lot of sort of SEOs in the world. Well, it should be, at least, if you want to stay relevant, is trying to stay on top of what's going on. Understanding how an LLM works is absolutely key. I can see it, but that's not understanding it. And by understanding it, it's like a mechanic trying to fix a car where you don't know how the internal combustion engine 100%. Works, kind of analogy, isn't it? If I don't understand how this engine works, how on earth am I going to try and eke out as much performance out of this engine that I can? And that, I agree. I believe that 7 out of 10 SEOs have probably never read that documentation, or keeping themselves on top of what the latest developments are in LLMs and that kind of stuff. Just going back to a point that you made earlier, though, about obviously the laziness and the processes and the laziness. That's not you saying using AI is lazy. That's actually probably more you saying it's a tool. You can use AI lazily, or you can use it effectively.
Okay, so interestingly, my comment was actually nothing to do with AI. My comment there was relating to this era of copycat content, where we all sort of fell into this mindset of, if you want to outrank another site, go and copy their content and make it a little bit better. It was that is what I mean by lazy SEO, as opposed to going and understanding what a searcher actually wants to see, what your audience cares about. It became so easy to, matches up with what you said about this era of tools, to load up a tool and say, okay, this tool says I need to reference this term another 3 times. All it did was drive a world where everyone was doing the same thing. If everyone's doing the same thing, how can anybody win?
Yeah,
absolutely. Competitive advantage. So my comment on lazy SEO was actually nothing to do with AI, interestingly. I think SEO is the most fantastic efficiency tool that any of us have ever seen in our professional lifetimes.
I agree, and I accept absolutely. You weren't making a specific point, but actually, what I see is a future here, which is which we alluded to right at the start when we were chatting. I think there's a pathway here of those lazy SEOs are going to embrace AI, and they're going to embrace AI in a process tool driven way, which means that they are going to probably come a little bit unstuck further on down the line because they're going to increase their ability and capacity to produce drivel. Where there's another option that's available to them down this pathway, which is to use AI more effective.
Yes, and it is the future of, if we talk about content as an example, we have to be looking right now where content marketers, content creators, where can they add real value right now? And it's understanding what AI can and can't do. AI cannot, at least in the same way as a human, cannot go and interview a customer, interview a subject matter expert, extract from somebody's head what is going on in the industry right now, what people care about, what people don't care about. But AI can absolutely take your transcript of an interview with a subject matter expert, with a user. It can absolutely take that transcript and help you to turn that into a brief, into a piece of content. It's using it efficiently. And I think, where a lot of marketers need to be thinking right now is, how can I stay on the right side of SEO? How can I understand where AI tools can and can't be used to almost supercharge my efficiency? And I think that's where a lot of people get caught up, because again, by not taking the time to fully understand, how an LLM works. It's very easy to go to ChatGPT, ask it something and take it as gospel. LLMs still hallucinate even when they are grounding. They will still hallucinate because they are essentially very advanced predictors of the next word. And we have to have this understanding of how they work. Now, I feel like I've been saying this for probably a year or more now. With AI, you get out of it what you put into it. If you put shit in, you get shit out. Now, where most people need to be thinking is, how can I take the time I would have spent writing a 2,000 word piece of content into doubling down and creating better research, finding better data, extracting it from people who haven't published it online, usually in the heads of people who we would often class as offline experts, and feeding that into AI to turn it into something, then bringing a human to edit.
Yeah. The story element that it misses, right? It cannot effectively create. You're a story, you are a storyteller, James, because you're in this PR world. And that's what it's about. It's about taking and figuring out the concept, the idea that people are going to like. In fact, so oddly, yesterday I was listening to a podcast with Phil Rosenthal and the guy whose name we always see on YouTube that I keep forgetting, Simon Sinek, is it? And it was an interview with him, and Phil Rosenthal obviously created Everybody Loves Raymond, and he said he'd written this show. And he was concerned about AI because it was one of those situations where I wanted to shout down the sort of the speakers, because he was saying, I'm so concerned that these movie studios now, they're just going to get AI to write all these movies. And I was saying, and I was kind of like, well, no, that's a bit of a misunderstanding of how these things work. It needs an idea, it needs a story, it needs a concept to write a masterpiece that is, a Godfather, or, your next Everybody Loves Raymond. It needs that idea. It's not going to do that, nor can I yet really see a future where that's going to be able to happen effectively.
I agree completely. And I think, it's this thing that, I'll say it again, put shit in, get shit out. And I think, it's too often seen as a tool to do things for you. No. It's the best personal assistant you have ever had. That is what AI is. And we will see it change. That's right now. And I think, this, my comment, just to put it out there, my comment about lazy SEOs isn't the SEOs, it's not relating to any individual SEO. It's relating to the discipline as a whole, where Google allowed us to be lazy. So what happens is, we don't know what we don't know. And we get into a world where things change rapidly. And we're used to being able to go and use, a semantic optimization tool, Surfer, ClearScope, and rewrite content based on that. And it worked. It's no different to step back to 2011 and you could go and buy 100 links from overseas that had no topical alignment and you would rank number one. I clearly remember in 2012, 2013, ranking sites in position one on Google for things like Make Money Online, for payday loans, for very, 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 very top terms. with garbage links. Now, we were lazy SEOs back then as an industry. We then had to figure shit out for ourselves, clean it all up. And we're now at that, again, talking about cycles, we've now come back to that same point with over-optimized content. And we're in the same scenario where the common trend through all of this is learn how a search engine works. No, a patent might not definitely be being used by Google right now, but it gives us a very, very clear insight into where Google wants to go.
100%. I couldn't agree more. I think what's interesting about that point is you can see the cycle that's happened. You really can see the cycle that's happened and that's continuing to happen. Let's move on to the next question. I could talk about this all day with you, but let's move on to the next question. Oh, I was also writing down because I thought to myself, James is being very careful to ensure here that the podcast title of this is SEO. All SEOs are lazy. And then putting your name next to it, just so I can get that clickbait title. I won't put that, I promise. So, what do you think differentiates the great and the good SEO?
It's very easy. It all comes down to one thing, and that's commercial awareness.
Yeah.
It's without a doubt. It's without a doubt very, very easy. It is commercial awareness and understanding of how businesses make money and how SEO ladders up into that to help a business make money. And my issue on this is that most SEOs have never been given an opportunity to develop commercial awareness. This is not on the SEOs. This is largely on the wider business environment where, as we said 10 minutes ago, SEO for a long time was seen as that dark art, that dirty tactic. It was SEOs don't need to know about money. SEOs don't need to understand about margins and lifetime value and conversion rates and gross margin. Yes, you do. And we're in a place now where that is expected of SEOs to be able to have these mature conversations with the board, with the C-suite to get budget signed off. Yet the majority of SEOs have only ever been taught tactical execution and SEO strategy within the framework of SEO.
Is that something that you mentor with young people that's coming through Digital Loft?
100%. If somebody doesn't understand how a client makes money and the agency makes money, they are, in my opinion, at a disadvantage. We've been running sessions for years now on developing commercial awareness of clients, how clients make money. It is the fundamental of being able to drive success. And that doesn't matter whether you're working on content, digital PR, SEO. If you cannot clearly explain how a specific client makes money, there are so many different business models out there. And don't forget, maybe not the same since the helpful content update, but step back 3 years and lots of businesses made money from traffic via ad revenue. So that's a very different business model to lead generation, where, as an example, we can drive the very, very best quality leads through SEO for a brand. But if their sales team are garbage, then that's not on us. We can only do so much. We can only drive qualified leads. E-commerce, as an example, again, a different business model completely. There are business models where recurring revenue means the lifetime value in a year, you can prove that somebody will buy 4, 5, 6 times. If you don't understand that, you can't plan the very best strategy that allows you to make a business more money, but also understanding that buying cycle from a customer, how they engage with a brand. And this is where, we talk about top of the funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. I don't believe that's not going to go away. That buying cycle still exists. It's just the platforms and the surfaces where maybe top of the funnel starts. It's not all on Google anymore. It's dispersing across multiple platforms. Some of that's AI, some of that's social media, some of it sticks on Google. Unless you know how a customer buys in the different touch points, you can't effectively develop an SEO strategy that makes money.
Yeah, e-commerce, and you mentioned there, is a classic example. You can put all of your efforts into new customer acquisition, whereas actually that means tighter margins. That means much less money made and profit made by the company than a recurring subscription model that they may be placed under in that entity. That is not just 100%. Additional funds that's going through cash flow. That is value added to the business if they're 100%. Thinking of selling and valuing that business. So exactly. 100%. Is there an element of, is that something that is taught? Because obviously we can, I'm always an advocate that you can teach SEO process all day long. You can sit someone down and take them through training and systems and tool. But is there a strength in commercial acumen that some people have and some people?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to curiosity. Some people are curious, some people aren't curious. But it comes down to, look, it's acknowledging that SEO is a function within marketing, which is a function within a business. And it's understanding that business ecosystem. You know, I am a big believer that a lot of SEOs would learn a lot by going and watching some basic videos to, you know, introductions to business finance, those sort of things. And, it's not about becoming an accountant. It's not about becoming the next CFO. It is about understanding marketing. You know, when we bring this down, it's about understanding marketing. It's about what makes people buy, how they buy, how people behave, how people return to a business. How, one of the questions I've asked many, many times to prospects, to clients I work with, is if all of your organic traffic disappeared tomorrow, what would that mean for your business? The most common answer is, well, we'd lose the revenue that's attributed to organic search. No, you wouldn't. Purchasing journeys are far, far more complex than that. You would lose everything that started top and middle of the funnel. Things like this are so important to understand. Understanding attribution, understanding that it is very, very rare that somebody lands from search and buys straight away. They have had another touch point with that business. That could have been on social, that could have been in the press, that could have been an ad. There are multiple touch points, and understanding attribution, I think, is probably the place to start for most people.
So many, again, so right. So many people think it's A and B, or A and Z.
It's not.
It's not. There's typically so many, and attribution, such a misunderstood concept across the board, both on the client side in many cases, but also internally as well. Misunderstood. So you're so right when it comes to that.
But coming back to what I said there, Tom, it's the simple explanation and simple way to understand that is, if you removed all of this channel's traffic, how would that impact revenue? It would not just be what's directly attributed at last click to that. Yeah. And that is, I think, the easiest way to understand it. Then start digging into learning about, okay, well, why? Why is that? Where does that revenue, where does that other revenue come from? How is that attributed? It's all things that can be taught.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. There are definitely, there's no reason why commercial skills can't be taught. Yeah, absolutely. I love that, because I would typically think that asking that question, there'd be such a technical SEO answer. James, I love the fact that you've just taken you've taken it completely out of that, but you're so right, and that's the beauty of it. It's absolutely right. What do you think the biggest misconception is when it comes to SEO?
The biggest misconception when it comes to SEO is when there is an assumption often that there is people often say, we don't know the reason why page X ranks above page Y. That is absolute nonsense. There is always a reason why a competitor ranks above you. The problem we have is that a lot of SEOs just do not know how to find that. They stay within tools. They will say, Screaming Frog tells me everything is okay. SEMrush tells me everything is okay. No, there is always a reason. The biggest misconception is that you often can't work out why a page or a site ranks above another one. There is always a reason.
Is it quantifiable? Is it because some of these things are very difficult to become quantifiable?
I think a lot comes down to the fact that, again, tools are very, very useful. But again, we've had so many tools available to us for the past 10 years, probably. I mean, I know when I first started out in SEO, I had Moz available to me, and that was it. And Moz was in its infancy in 2009. So I was forced to learn SEO by reverse engineering what ranks. Over time, we've all come to rely on tools. And don't get me wrong, tools are fantastic for speeding up. But the best thing you can do when starting to investigate, I talk a lot about investigative SEO. When you are trying to investigate why a page isn't ranking, or why it isn't ranking higher, or why it's being outranked by something else, then the number one thing that you have to do on that is go and explore that site as a user. Go and use the SERPs, search for those queries. Take almost a view of, if I was a user or a searcher here, why would I prefer the result that ranks top to my site? I can guarantee you it's a fantastic exercise to do that most people skip over. They jump straight to the tools. What that means is we again get into this culture of, okay, well, Screaming Frog tells me everything is okay, so we don't know. It depends. That whole it depends culture. It's very, very easy to say, I don't know why that page ranks above another one. It's usually a cop-out. It's usually what it usually means is, I do not have the experience, or I do not know why that page ranks. Now, don't get me wrong. These things take time. these things, I've been in it, I'm in my 16th year in SEO. I still learn things every single day. And I think that appetite for learning, but that, ultimately that misconception is that, there is always a way, there is always a reason why one page ranks above another. And I think the most common misconception I see is people saying, we don't know what.
Do you think, let's take out all the quantifiables that are very easy to quantify. And, sometimes we do have yardstick metrics that allow us. And I know I slated DA before, but we've got DADR and all those that allow us. And I stress it's a yardstick.
Yeah.
There are those that are quantifiable. But is this a misconception that we, a lot of SEOs or perhaps a lot of people still see Google as a robot and therefore it should be quantifiable, 100%. It should be binary, whereas actually it should just be, you can go and be on the site and see things, visibly.
100%. It's, I'm often a critic of the things Google says, but I think, Google has been telling us for a good number of years now, create content for humans, not search engines. That is the number one issue we see here. I can almost guarantee when I'm looking at a project, running an audit, trying to figure out why one site ranks above another, almost certainly it's the SEO, the traditional SEO fundamentals are probably in great health, but what's been overlooked is the need to optimize for user engagement. And I think that's the biggest shift we've seen over the past few years that, we've seen in the DOJ trials that, nav boost, go and take a look at what these things mean, what these things are. Google is using various user engagement signals to determine where a site should rank. That is usually, in my experience, it's usually the reason. A project I was doing some consultancy work on recently, they had ranked very, very well for about 6 months, and then they started to slip slightly. My conclusion there was that your user engagement metrics are poorer than the competition for this reason, this reason, and this reason. We proved that by going and running audience research to say, when you as a consumer, when you as a searcher land on a site like this, what are the things you care about the most? The things they care about the most were not visible above the fold or even in the first 2 or 3 scrolls on the site we were working with. They had ticked the SEO fundamentals. They had a great link profile. They had great technical health, and their content in a words on the page sense was very good. What they didn't have was the same alignment with user expectations. And my belief there is that they started to drop in visibility because Google had had access to the data in the rolling window that NavBoost uses to determine that when people land on this site, they don't stick around the same as when they land on another result.
At that point there, is that not something, a differentiator between a great and a good? That piece of work there where you said you've gone away, you can't quantify the different user engagement metrics between your site that you're working on and your competitors. No. That's data that's not available to you. But your way that you've got around that is you've gone away and identified what engages with that audience. And that is something that 100%. I don't hear a huge amount of SEOs actually doing. No. So it's that activity which SEO should be doing. Because we kind of put the SEO activity into it's either technical or it's link building or it's content, and that's it, right?
Understanding your audience. It is the most common piece of work we are doing right now on an SEO perspective. It is reworking commercial pages based on having gone and spent time interviewing, studying, engaging with the target audience. And in addition to things like interviews, focus groups, Reddit is an absolute goldmine of this. Take some time to browse Reddit, understand what people are actually talking about, what do people actually care about. It's the research step, and this is where I spoke before about using AI to streamline operations. AI cannot go and do these things for you, but AI can help you turn these things into better content, better pages.
Yes, exactly. And it can go and all that, you could go on Reddit and be looking up all this information, reams and reams and reams of comments that would last you for days. But you can assimilate all that information very simply using those tools. Exactly.
Of course we can.
Yeah, brilliant. The one piece of advice that you'd give to someone who was starting in SEO today?
The one piece of advice I would give to someone starting in SEO right now is to dedicate part of your time to learning marketing, not just SEO. Again, a common theme here, but take the time to understand where SEO sits in that marketing ecosystem. understand what users want, understand how to sell to people, how to communicate. Google tells us all the time, create content for users, not search engines. But the problem we have is that for so many years, SEO has been a discipline about doing things for search engines. So now we've got this whole generation of marketers, of SEOs, who've never learned marketing. So it doesn't have to be detailed. You don't need to go and get a degree in marketing, but understanding the fundamentals of what makes people buy, how to communicate with the target audience, how to go and have conversations with these target audiences, and how to think outside of just SEO. Break out of that silo of thinking everything should be done for search engines. The reality is nothing should be done for search engines. I think we're many, many years away from that actually being reality. But in terms of that sort of top line goal, how do you do the things that reward your users? And in 2025, the reality is that most of these things, we can talk about EAT, we can talk about PR, center it all around a North Star of creating a better user experience, a better user journey and touch points with your brand. And that's how you win.
Yeah, absolutely. Where do you think the best place for those? Because I don't know. So to tell my own story, I feel like I went down the same path, which was I was a massive nerd, so therefore thought that SEO was a great place to go down in, because it was a nerdy place to be. And then I realized probably too late that bloody hell, I should probably know something about marketing in order to do this well. I clocked that not early enough, so went and did my due diligence and did the classics like the Seth Godins and all that kind of stuff to try and learn the fundamentals of marketing. Is that the direction to go?
I mean, I think yes, to a certain extent. I mean, I am a massive advocate for going and finding some of the maybe not maybe the most commonly recommended, but there are some fantastic marketing books out there, and study marketing in that way. I can make a couple of recommendations. You spoke about Simon Sinek before. His books start with why he's absolutely fantastic. Good to great. Why some I just find it here. Good to great. Why some companies make the leap and others don't. A fantastic read. Working Backwards, a book that was written by 2 ex-employees of Amazon about how when Amazon launches anything at all, they start by determining what the end product or the end service or the end goal looks like and work backwards from delivery on that. These are the sort of things that, I launched a newsletter the other week, and in my first edition of that newsletter, I gave a bit of an overview on the one book that changed my mindset on strategy was Working Backwards, written by 2 ex-Amazon employees. It totally changed my mindset about SEO strategy, and it's not a book that has anything to do with SEO at all. It's about business strategy. And I think, even picking up 2 or 3 of these books will take people into a place where they start to be curious, they start to think about things differently. And I think that's what a lot of it is. It's about being in a position to think, am I doing this for SEO, or am I doing this because it's the right marketing decision? And look, SEO should be a subset of marketing, but that means we have to go and do our research. Even, studying why people like Gary Vaynerchuk, Stephen Bartlett, even why some of those individuals have become so popular, in the SEO world, people like Brian Dean, because they have taken complex topics and simplified them to make them easy to understand, easy to grasp, and relatable to people who maybe don't have that detailed business background. But be curious, there's lots of great stuff on YouTube. There's also lots of not very great stuff on YouTube. But I think once you, start with books, whether you listen to them as audio books, whether you use Blinkist for a summary, whether you read a hard copy. And, these are the things that over the past 10 years we've lost. We all consume content on social media. We all consume content on YouTube. But I think sometimes we need to go back to the foundations of, how would someone have learned marketing 20 years ago? They'd have picked up textbooks. And I think, there's a middle ground. There are books that have been written by great marketers. Read the story of businesses like Amazon, like Uber, like, they're absolutely fascinating stories about how they gained traction. And having a curiosity for these things puts you in a place where you are starting to think like a marketer, not just an SEO, which to me puts you in a better position to deliver SEO with a commercial impact.
Yeah, I agree. And going back to a point you made earlier as well, also reading those, there are books out there about the history of Google and how it came to be, the history of its ad platform, and actually hearing those stories, because the motivations behind them can still influence and impact your methodology today to be more effective. If you can understand the mindset that they were in when they were building that platform in the first place, sometimes that can be really, really
Of course it
insightful.
can.
So there's books in that realm as well.
But
And you mentioned
you
Blinkist.
can.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, but you can end up down a rabbit hole. There has been times when I've been reading business books and you go from one to the next and you suddenly realize I've done nothing else but read these books for 3 days. But I think it puts you in a position where your mindset shifts. And I think, my single piece of advice here would be go into SEO with a broader mindset and it will make you a better SEO.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Absolutely. Okay, so last question, and I could literally talk for hours, but I promised myself I wouldn't let these podcasts go on for hours. What's the biggest key lesson that you think you've learned in your whole SEO career, and how did you learn it?
The biggest lesson I have learned in SEO is one that I don't believe many SEOs will be able to learn ever again, and that is that you can't cut corners in SEO. Now, I've told this story a few times. I will never, ever, ever forget the day Penguin hit. I was working at another agency at the time, and I was actually on holiday in Florida, and I got a very panicky phone call from the CEO of the agency I was working for going, every client's rankings have just plummeted. I will never forget that conversation. And I didn't know any better. I'd been in SEO 2 and a bit years, and I was always taught when I went into SEO, as I've said a few times, that SEO was spammy, manipulative, that you were essentially cheating your way to the top of Google. And it was just what we did. We bought links, we keyword stuffed content, and Penguin hit, and things were very, very different. And that panic, that house on fire that we talked about before, it totally changed my whole career path. It made me evaluate that what we're doing as SEOs isn't the way to do things. And I think, that's the time when it sparked that curiosity in me that maybe SEO should be more like marketing than spammy, manipulative, seen as a dark art or voodoo. And that was really, I think, the starting point of, it was sort of the start of the end for me in working for other agencies, because I started to get very, very frustrated as my own personal journey went on. How do we do this properly? 90% of SEOs are spammers. How do we move out of this? As an industry, we went from buying links on random resource pages in 2011, 2012, to building networks of fake guest post sites and dressing it up as the new era of link building in 2012 and 2013. From the moment that pivoted, it felt so incredibly wrong to me. I saw firsthand the damage that Penguin did to so many businesses, and I vowed never to be in that position with clients again. And it was a lesson that I learned in that you cannot cut corners in marketing. You cannot, and we've spoken a few times now about the helpful content update, about other updates like that. And those of us who are experienced know if something's too good to be true, it probably is, that it has a finite lifespan and it will come crashing down. Don't just do something because it's a quick win. Yes, it might drive growth today, but it won't drive growth tomorrow or next week or next month. And I honestly believe that most SEOs have lost that ability to have those almost panic stations moments. And I don't think AI is the same. I think helpful content update was for some marketers, but I think the reality is that most SEOs in agencies in-house are working on brick and mortar businesses to a certain extent, not content sites. So I don't think they saw the full fallout of that the same way we did with Penguin. When you are a junior SEO and you are having 10 calls a day from clients who are screaming at you down the phone that they are having to make layoffs because they have lost all their revenue overnight, it changes you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Wow. That is an incredible experience to have to go through. And I can imagine, do you see this coming a little bit full circle? And I kind of mentioned it before because of social media in particular. So I'm part of this group of creators in this space, and when I started creating on the likes of Instagram and TikTok, I said to myself at that time that I knew I had to be very, very careful about what I was putting out there, because I know other creators, and I know other creators don't abide by these rules, and fine, whatever, they do what they do, but there is a lot of rubbish that is burned out and churned out. And I said to myself, at least if I stick by my principles and make sure that at least whatever I'm giving out I believe in, and it's something that I, is at least backed by some form of it, then I should be okay. So are we coming full circle with this? Because there's a lot of nonsense that is coming out. There is an
awful lot of nonsense coming out there. But I think, again, coming back to points I've raised earlier, if you take the time to understand why something works or doesn't work, you are in a better position to make a call. And I think the best thing to ask, in SEO, as an example, the best question you can ask yourself when making a recommendation is, would I still do this if Google didn't exist? If the answer is yes, you are probably doing something that's going to stand the test of time. If the answer is no, I'm doing this solely for Google, then there's a very good chance you're doing something to follow a hype, follow a trend, follow something that works today. The best example I can give you of this is there are so many pieces of content being published right now where businesses are creating a list of the 10 best digital PR agencies. They put themselves at the top and they put not even their competitors beneath. They put 10 vaguely related businesses. In many cases, it's full service agencies. It's tools. It's off the shelf solutions. Why? Because that will get you ranking in AI right now. Right now, AI is rewarding these listicles that place you at works today. It will not work tomorrow. It will not work long term. It is a manipulative tactic which is exploiting a loophole. For that reason, I do not want any part in that. Does it mean I am maybe losing some short-term visibility in the LLMs for things like Best Digital PR Agency because I refuse to, from a brand and marketing perspective, I flat out refuse to create a list on our website, on our agency site of the 10 best digital PR agencies? The biggest issue is that most of these lists are completely not true. They are not the best agencies. They are biased towards one business and 9 unrelated businesses who don't represent the best. This has a finite life cycle. And these are the sort of trends that you can watch a video. I see a lot of them. I see a lot of people sharing on LinkedIn. Share and comment, and I'll give you my guide on how to rank in an LLM. 70, 80% of them are go and publish these listicles. Go and pay for guest posts with these listicles. It works today. I can guarantee you it will not work tomorrow as these models become more mature. That's an example right now. But taking that understanding to go, that's because the infancy of the LLM models we're in. This is not going to stand the test of time. But hey, long term, those of us who do things the right way win in the end.
Yeah, and it's always been the case in SEO. You're absolutely right. If you're doing things the right way, like say, take SEO out of it. If you're doing things for the right way, for the people behind it, then invariably that's always what Google's going to chase. And sometimes I'm always saying to young SEOs, pivot this. What does Google want? Okay. What does Google want? Google wants the best experience for its users. You want to be at the top of Google, but Google wants the best experience for its users. So this spammy tactic that you think works now is not what Google wants. So they are going to move the goalposts.
If you take a mindset of how can we create the best page on the web for this topic and take the time to research what best page on the web means, you will do very, very well in the long term. If you go, I'm going to do what I think users want or what other sites are doing that are winning today, you're only ever playing catch up.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. James, I could talk to you all day. I feel like I've been sat in a masterclass for the last hour because we've been through so much and it's all been fascinating and it resonates.
And we've actually not really talked about SEO all that much.
We've not talked really about technical. We've barely talked about content or indeed any kind of backlink building. And I think that's the beauty of it because it's so much more than that. James, I know that you've just released your newsletter. Now, you mentioned your first one, which I missed out on. I've now signed up and got your second newsletter, so I'm now signed up and subscribed. But where can people go to get subscribed to your newsletter? Because I know you're putting a lot of effort into this at the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. If people head to digitaloft.co.uk and you will see in our menu Outranked SEO newsletter, head over there, sign up, tell me what you think. I've had some fantastic feedback already. The whole goal of this newsletter is to increase the industry's commercial awareness to help people drive revenue, not just rankings. That is the whole reason I created this, to help SEOs think more commercially. And everything I'm putting out is tied back to how can you use SEO, digital PR, content, tech to make more money as a business.
And I can't recommend it enough. If you think that the last hour has been insightful for you, then you've got so much more of that to come in that newsletter. I absolutely know it. James, have you got anything else coming up down the pipeline that the guys, that everybody listening can go check you out on?
Yeah, we're running a monthly webinar. So again, head to digitaloft.co.uk, find the webinars tab, and you will see the webinars we have coming up. We're putting a lot into webinar content, video content on a lot of topics that don't get talked about anywhere near enough. Upcoming, we have things about how to actually drive visibility on Google merchant listings, the free listings. We'll be running through a case study of 5 brands on what long-term investment into digital PR looks like from a growth perspective. Topics like that, topics that most people don't talk about. Feedback from the first one were things like, wow, I wish my boss would attend this. Wow, you guys actually share things that are actionable and insightful, not just the same old generic drivel. They're the sort of comments we get. My take is if you're going to do something, do it right. Build something, create something that people actually want to, content people want to consume, that they learn something from. And go in with a mindset, if I only teach you one thing today, it's be more commercial, understand how a business makes money. And yeah, I think that's the ethos of pretty much everything we're doing right now.
I absolutely love it. James, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you for sharing such insights into the SEO world. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much to James from Digital Loft for joining me on this episode of SEO is Not Voodoo. Really good to speak to James. I feel like me and James have been in each other's spheres for such a long time now, but never really got the opportunity to sit down and have a proper chat. I could have listened to him for hours. He has so much insight and knowledge in the business. It's unreal. And I really respect him. I really respect for the way that he just cut through a lot of the, like he said, we didn't really talk about SEO in that episode, which I think is mind-boggling. What we talked about was what is outside and surrounding SEO, which is so important, but we don't talk about it because it's not really that sexy. Anyway, it was a really great chat. I hope you enjoyed it too. Don't forget, you can subscribe to SEO is Not Voodoo anywhere that you get your podcast. Please do. And if you want to leave a review, you can do. Everywhere that you can do, please do that. That'll be amazing. I will catch you next time on the next episode of SEO is Not Voodoo. See you there.